And welcome back, everybody, to episode 206 of Two Goalies, One Mic, brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room. If you need a beer, make sure you go get a Fatty Beer. Let them know Two Goalies, One Mic sent you. I am Duane, your host. My co-host, Connor Hurley, checking in live from California. Hurls, summer is winding down. Fall is upon us. Sabre season is, 26 days away now? 25, 24, I don't know. They just finished up the NHL Prospect Challenge at Harbor Center. Hockey season is literally right around the corner. Training camp starting next week.
Yeah, it's coming quick before we know it. Even last week, a month away, was at least a tiny bit surprising. But yeah, it's going to be here before we know it. First preseason game, I think, is on Monday. So we're getting real close here. And I think things will start coming into form pretty soon. And that, yeah, like you said, started with the Prospect Challenge last week. And the roster, at least for the main squad, is gonna be pretty clear here pretty soon.
Yeah, and I was able to attend all of the Prospect Challenge games. And I will say this before we get too deep into it, I just want to lead off. Radim Murka, as advertised. He was the best player on the ice for both teams at all times. And he just dominated.
Yeah, based upon what I saw and what I read, that seemed to be the case as well. I'd love to get an actual pronunciation on his name so we don't consistently butcher that. Murka is what it is? Murka, yeah. Every time I see him on the ice, I can't help but think that it's Tyler Myers. Big right-handed, lanky defenseman wearing number 57 for the Sabres.
Yeah.
Offensively skilled, seems to play pretty physical. A lot of similarities there, which I think the Sabres lineup could use a lot of that. So it's encouraging to say the least, especially in his first action since being drafted. It seems like aside from maybe Ostlund or Hellenius, he's probably in the top 3 to 4 of the most touted Sabres prospects at the moment. So that's a really, really good sign this early on.
He's easily their best defensive prospect in the system. Obviously, their first round pick this last draft. But there's a lot. I mean, they went 0-3. They didn't win a game. But I will say this: glass half full. The players you wanted to perform well did.
Yeah, I mean, that seems to be the case. I was reading a little bit of Fairbairn's notebook today. I saw the videos you posted over the weekend. Hellenius especially, I think he's at least widely considered to be the Sabres' top prospects. It might be a tie between those three, Ostlund and Murka as well. But the point of a tournament like this isn't to necessarily win the games. Obviously, that'd be nice, and you want to establish a good winning culture, but at the end of the day, it's about development for all these guys. And that's what's most important. And I think that was at least accomplished with the top guys, and even some of the mid-tier and lower level, relatively, of course, because all of these guys are really, really good hockey players. But in every level of the organization, I think that was accomplished. And obviously having it at Harbor Center too is pretty cool. So, I think that the goals were accomplished, to say the least.
Yeah, and even go back to 2024, they haven't actually won a game in this tournament since the opening game of 2024 against, I believe it was against Columbus. They've lost 5 straight. But to your point, like, this is all about development, right? Seeing how much progress you've made compared to last year. We have some videos to show too. Konsta Hellenius was a very noticeable player. Played physical. I would say he was one of their better, if not their best offensive player almost every single game. Noah Ostlund too, right there with him. I think one of the questions coming in, and I think even Fairburn mentioned it, is can he match the level of physical play that it takes to play in the NHL? Not just, playing physical, but being able to take the physicality, being able to take a hit and bounce back. At least at this level at the camp, 100%. Konsta Hellenius got absolutely buried from behind along the boards, and Ostlund was the first guy to jump in. I've sometimes even felt like he was being almost targeted by the bigger players on no matter who they were playing. They obviously know he's one of the, the better players for Buffalo, and, he got picked on a little bit, but he did not back down. And that impressed me quite a bit, especially for a guy his size. He's more known for skill. He didn't back down. And also you made the point earlier too. And even Fairburn mentioned it, would Mirka play like he's 6'6"? You see 57, you think Tyler Myers, that was a big knock on him, right? He wasn't physical enough. He was offensively gifted, but just wasn't physical enough. Mirka was in on every scrum. He was in it between whistles. He got into with Eric Bolton's kid. I think it was either Ryder or Sawyer Bolton. He wasn't afraid to stand up for himself, stand up for his teammates, and instigate and get under guys' skin.
Yeah, that's definitely necessary, especially for a guy that they drafted specifically. Some would say that they even reached a little bit in terms of where his prospect profile was to get a guy like that into the system. 6'6", obviously right-handed defenseman. It's something they needed more of, but to play like that, I think is obviously super important to use his size, to use his physicality to his advantage. Of course, like his defensive awareness, I think, and his instincts are going to come along as he progresses, and he's not going to play like a 10-year NHL vet when he's 18 years old. And I think that's obviously going to come with time. We've seen that even with our top defensive prospect still in the system at this moment with Owen Power. His offensive instincts have come before his defensive awareness has been absolutely perfect. But at the same time, we've seen flashes here and there. So to have that physicality at the moment and to at least show signs of being responsible in his own end is really important. So yeah, I think everybody should be really excited for this kid. It's something that they don't have in the system, and I think he's gonna obviously probably won't make the team this year, but starting next year and the year after, I think he's gonna have a really good shot.
No doubt about it. I do want to pull up the hit from Merck. I think this is it right here from Merck on Roosevelt from New Jersey. It wasn't he just hit him, Hurls. He ragdolled him, and it was an awesome hit. Oh my God! Whole play. Oh, one more time. Only 8 seconds. Like that's what you want to see. That's what you want to see from him and the guy his size. He just enforced his size on you. Like you hit him, but you didn't let you just hit him. He just threw you down to the ground. I fucking love that.
Yeah, I can't help get over the Tyler Myers comparisons. He looks so much like him and skates so much like him. It's really bizarre.
Oh yeah,
but
Tyler Myers is a really good skater. Coming out of the draft year, and sometimes those bigger guys, the skating side of things, it takes a little bit longer for them to develop. But I would say he's pretty damn close to being NHL levels ready in terms of skating. His stride is clean, very fluid skater. I mean, when you come and play at this level, I mean, he played pro, I believe, overseas. Then he came over. I'm not sure if he was loaned to the WHL or if he signed. I think that's going to come into play to determine if he can play in Rochester or not. I talked to Fairburn at the Harbor Center too, and he wasn't even sure. I think that's the big question here is, depending on, again, if he was loaned to WHL or if he signed a contract, could determine if he can play in Rochester next season. But I thought every box he checked it: skating, physicality. He scored the first goal for Buffalo in the prospect tournament. Nice shot from the point, got it on net, and crowd went wild. It was awesome. It was a fun time. Even though they didn't win, it was a good time.
Yeah, and I think especially from a Sabres fan perspective, I think that realizing that winning those games is not what's important, as we said.
No.
So I think it's a good sign moving forward, and I think the priority as a Sabres fan, like keeping things in perspective at the moment, is not necessarily having the best prospect pipeline anymore. You want some of these guys to graduate. You want them to contribute meaningfully in Rochester soon after their draft year. You want them to have a legitimate chance to make the Sabres at some point. Obviously, that's happened with Yuri Kulik recently. Zach Benson kind of skipped that process, but you want the guys that they're drafting to have a legitimate path to the NHL roster, because otherwise, what's the point? They're just going to play in the minors or play in juniors forever, and we're still in the same place that we were. Drafting and developing, as the Bills talk about all the time, draft, develop, and re-sign. I think that is a model that can be replicated in the NHL, and it's something I'd like to see more of, at least not rushing these prospects, but giving them a quicker, more tangible path to produce meaningfully in the NHL. And I think what we've seen here, especially with these 3 to 4 guys, Oslin, Mertka, Hellenius, and Rosian as well. I think these guys have a legitimate shot to make the roster in the next 1 to 2 years.
I would even go as far as I think if Merca has a solid training camp, he gets NHL games at the start of the season. I can definitely see it. Again, this is just prospects compared to NHL talent, but he was just that dominant. I mean, and all the people I talked to, whether it was fans or some writers, I said, do you think that he could get a look to start the season? If he gets up to 8 games, I mean, I don't see why not. Competition is really healthy in pro sports. Like, why not? And they all tend to agree. That's how good he looks.
Yeah, I mean, I think that'd be surprising for a rookie defenseman, but like we said, we saw it with Zach Benson. Why can't a guy who's 6'6" and can skate like the wind?
Nobody expected Tyler Myers to do it, and he won the Calder Trophy that year.
Yeah, and I think that these guys are stronger. They have better conditioning than they have in the past, and I don't think it'd be crazy at all. I think his defensive game would have to probably come a long way. Having not seen a lot of the way he plays, that's probably where he would struggle with the most in the NHL initially. Obviously, off the rush, at the blue line, his pinches, the ability to handle the speed of the game compared to what he's previously dealt with in the WHL and juniors. So I think that would take a bit of an adjustment period. But yeah, I mean, especially the third pair, I think there are some questions there, as we mentioned with Samuelson, and obviously they signed Connor Timmins, but none of that is set in stone at this point. So yeah, I mean, if he plays his way onto it, by all means, let's do this.
I'm going to pull up right now. I believe it's the clip. Let me see if I can find it. It might take me a second, but there was a clip of when Hellenius was hit from behind, and I saw a comment here in the peanut gallery from Rosine. Rosine did jump in on that scrum, but outside of that, man, and even Coach Mike Leone said it to the media. This was a tournament that you need Isaac Rosine to dominate, right? He's been around for a minute. He did put on some size this offseason that was very noticeable. But being a guy who played as well as he did for Rochester at the AHL level, he has NHL games under his belt. This was a tournament you really wanted to see him dominate this prospects tournament. I don't even think he had a point. I wouldn't say he was disappointing. I mean, he did have some looks, but I would say that there were some guys that jumped Rosine in the pecking order, no doubt, after this tournament heading into training camp.
Yeah, I saw the quote as well, and he is on the last year of his contract, so he's got to prove something meaningful, and this is the time for him. Obviously, he's still very young, but it's kind of a make or break with the organization from that perspective.
What about it?
Yeah, and yeah, that makes sense, and hopefully that'll motivate him, especially down in Rochester, and he might get that first call up, given that he's already had NHL games, and I think at least defensively he's proved to be responsible. Obviously, he hasn't produced at the NHL level up until this point, but if he can show that adding that extra muscle, adding that extra size can translate to the NHL level and hopefully produce as well, I think that obviously be the best possible outcome for him.
No doubt about it. Again, Consta Hellenius, again, I mentioned before, he didn't have any points, but he was very noticeable good. Some guys, that really stood out to me, they're on AHL level, AHL contracts, not on NHL deals, but Red Savage and Matteo Constantini, guys that played in a lot of, important situations for Leone, would not be surprised if either of them get at some point 2-way NHL deals, especially if they have strong training camps, because I know Savage, I think he played for Michigan State, was their captain last year. And he just looked really good. Another guy, Ryan Rusinski, I played for the Youngsville Phantoms out of the USHL last year, 42 points in 49 games, was a late round pick. I think it was the 7th round pick for them. I know he's committed to, I think, Ohio State after next season, but also looks really good. Just play with a ton of jump in his step, and I think that from looking at the draft class, I wasn't mad. David Bedkowski, I think he struggled a little bit. He's such a big kid at 18 years old. More or less, I think that was him just really trying to catch up to the speed at this level and, eventually at the NHL level. But I shook this kid's hands, Hurls, after the first game, and he has like a meat cleaver for meat cleavers for hands. Like, he shook my hand. I feel very confident in saying that he could have broken all 4 of my fingers with his hand, with a handshake. It was just like the strongest grip I've ever felt in my life.
Yeah, he seems like he's got a bit of a mean streak. Quick aside, Red Savage is the best hockey name I've heard in a really long
about
time.
It, right? I love it. Absolutely love it.
I mean, I've been called Red Savage before, so it really speaks to me personally. But him at the NHL level, I think would be tremendous. Yeah, I also read a little bit on those guys, and they do seem to have an NHL profile, especially competing and playing those tough minutes in the NCAA. I think that's a pretty good harbinger of whether you can succeed at the AHL level. Obviously, you got to produce a little bit, but maybe even in a third or fourth line role. I think having a background like that, being the captain at Michigan State and wherever else, I think that's a pretty good sign. So also very necessary for that level as well.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I do want to give a quick shout out to a few people that recognize us from the pod at the prospect tournament. Shout out to Rob and Brian. Appreciate you guys always tuning in. Appreciate obviously you showing love, especially in the chat. Both of you, I've seen you both. So shout out to both of you, and always thank you for the support. Moving on, goaltending wasn't something I would write home about. They came to camp with 4 goaltenders. Scott Ratzlaff was sick, so he didn't play. So, I mean, Samuel Milosh, Ryerson Leanders, and Topias Linen all got full games. But defensively, like, we can sit here and talk about Murka, Komarov, Novikov, and say, oh, they all looked like they've improved greatly. But playing together defensively as a team, they looked awful on their own end. They did their goaltenders no favors. There were bits and pieces of certain parts of games that I liked a lot from especially Leanders and Milosh, but as a whole, man, it was really hard to judge because, they just were given almost no help in crucial moments during the game. And, there were plenty of times where I feel like they came up with some big saves for Buffalo, but just defensively, they couldn't bail them out.
Yeah, a high-level prospects challenge just sounds like an absolute nightmare for a goalie, no matter who you're playing for. So I wouldn't put much credence into that. These guys are going to develop with their teams overseas at the juniors in the ECHL at different levels. So I wouldn't place too much emphasis on that. Obviously, those guys too, making big saves, coming up in big moments. Obviously, you want to make every save as a goalie, but a high-level prospects challenge, which are intended to highlight skill as much as anything, I think is a tough situation for any goalie. And these guys aren't necessarily super high level goalie prospects themselves. They were either drafted in later rounds or signed, and they're still, as we've talked about, even with a guy like Devin Levi, like going through a development process, which is different from forwards and defensemen. So I wouldn't say that the future of the Sabres goaltending prospect pylon is necessarily something anyone needs to worry about. This is a tough measure of that for sure.
No doubt about it. I thought Novikov looked really good. Phenomenal feet. Moves the puck very well. Plays physical. He looked really good with Radim Murka when they were paired together. Komarov, who I think the biggest knock on him last year during this tournament was his skating ability, transitioning. That has very noticeably improved. Liked a lot from what I saw from him. Komarov, I still think he, has a year or two before he can possibly, contribute to the main roster. Novikov, I think it'll be a little bit more difficult just because we're so loaded on the left side. Obviously, Ryan Johnson is still trying to find a way to get into this lineup himself. They just signed him, so we'll see what happens with him. But I liked everything I saw from those two, especially. And overall, like I said, and I said this to Harrington, I got to talk to him for a minute. The players you wanted to perform well did, and I think that's the most important thing coming out of this tournament.
For sure. And the the emphasis of, or the focus on the Sabres prospects for a long time has been the forwards and these smaller, skilled, shiftier forwards. But even a guy like Hellenius, and in my mind, I thought he was a smaller guy, but then I was looking him up today. He's 5'11", 190. It seems like he plays even bigger than that in terms of the way that he battles and the way that he competes. So obviously that's a really good sign. And as we mentioned, a guy like Merca as one of the higher touted prospects now added to the system. I think they could have gone with a few other guys in the draft. And I think people mentioned that when he was drafted, but they had him specifically in mind for his profile and what he brought to the game and what he brought to something that they didn't have yet. So to add that versatility, to add that different skill set and size profile to their system, I think is a really good sign. And yeah, I can't wait to see how they do at camp. And if they do, obviously Hellenius will be back with the Americans, but it'd be really interesting to see where Mirko ends up.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Now we're getting NHL training camp. I don't know if you can pull it up real quick, Hurls. They did just release the rosters for training camp. I believe Buffalo is actually coming to training camp with 8 goaltenders. All 8 are coming.
Let's see. Sabres announced 2025 Sabre roster. So got the goaltenders. Yeah, Alexander Grigoriev, Ryerson Leanders, Topias Lehinen, Devin Levi, Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Alex Lyon, Samuel Milosh, and Scott Ratzlaff.
Yep. Not too sure. Yeah, I mean, again, I it's interesting to see where Topias Lehinen fits in if he kind of makes the run for Rochester or if he goes back to Europe. I thought he had a good bounce back last season. He only went 13-10 at a .910 save percentage. He was a high second-round pick for Buffalo. I think it's 41st overall. So obviously, they invested quite a bit into him. So I don't know. We'll see if he gives. That'll be an interesting competition, I guess, to see who gets that backup role, potentially behind Levi, depending on what the UPL situation is. Again, it shows that he's going to be there, but I imagine that's I don't know in what capacity, how much he's going to be playing. But we'll see who. That'd be interesting for me at least to see who makes a run at that backup position in Rochester. But a full camp, and I genuinely think, and I'm trying to pull it up right now, Noah Austin's goal from Prospect Camp. But there are a couple guys that I saw this weekend that if mostly one specifically, but if they have a good camp and continue to impress like they did in the Prospects tournament, I could see them trying to push for a bottom 6 role on this team. I really don't think anything is for sure locked up in that bottom 6. I think Peyton Krebs, we talked about on this show, could be a bubble guy himself. I think he only has 1 year remaining on his deal anyway, and they're not paying him a lot. I could be wrong. I'm not sure if I think this is the last year of his deal, but I think Noah Austin has a real opportunity here if he impresses at training camp, not just to get NHL games, but to make this roster.
Yeah, I mean, with a 14-year playoff drought, I think they should try just about anything, and any combination, especially in that bottom 6, that works and is best for the team, whether that's the second power play unit or the penalty kill. I think they should be open to just about anything. If Konsta Hellenius or Noah Ostlund or Rosian play well enough in training camp and make their way on the roster, they earned it. They deserve it. And a guy like, as you mentioned, Peyton Krebs or even Jordan Greenway, or obviously they just traded for Josh Doan, but some of the guys who are somewhat on the bubble, Beck Mallinston, guys who you're not necessarily going to think that they're going to be the make or break of why this team makes the playoffs or not. Yeah, I mean, I think they should place emphasis on the guys that they've drafted and developed. And if they're ready, they deserve a spot on the team. And I hope that they'll treat it that way after training camp.
Your opinion of, obviously, did we talk about the UPL injury and the signing of Georgiev last week?
I think that was after we talked last week.
Yeah. So the Sabres signed Georgiev last week in response to a UPL injury. I don't think you do that unless you expect him to be missing time, right? Like Georgiev hasn't been playing in the AHL; he's been playing in the NHL. Granted, his numbers have been pretty terrible, but that's a guy that you bring in to probably compete for an NHL job, not at the AHL level.
Yeah, you'd think so. I think his numbers recently, I was just looking at it. Last year he was 15, 26, and 4, 875 save percentage, 371 goals against. He isn't so he's born 96, so he's just pushing 30-ish. Yeah, 29, 30.
Yeah, he was on
So
that. He was one of those two goalies with Shesterkin,
yeah,
with the Rangers, and eventually they had to choose one, and they chose the right one,
and
obviously.
then went to the Avs, and then he's with the Sharks after that. So not necessarily the best situation, but yeah, I mean, having NHL level talent, especially as you mentioned for that AHL backup position behind Levi, I think is not a bad thing to have. Of
No,
course, maybe it's not something that they envisioned given whatever UPL's injury is, but yeah, it could speak to the level of severity. Obviously, UPL's got the history with the double hip replacement. Hopefully, it's nothing related to that, and hopefully, it's nothing too serious because obviously that would change a lot of things of how the Sabres would be viewed moving into the season if they would have to go with a combination of Lyon and Levi, Lyon and Grigoriev, whatever it may be. But yeah, I mean, could be related, or they just found an opportunity and he didn't have too many other shots, and he was at least willing to potentially have an AHL role to at least begin this year. So I don't think we'll know that for sure, at least until training camp rolls around. But having NHL at least caliber depth in your organizational pipeline
no, I
from a
don't
goaltending
disagree at all.
perspective is pretty good.
It was again, it'll be just interesting to see. I know they signed him to like almost damn near league minimum deal for 1 year, but it'll be interesting to see again. We talked about Topias Lennon, and I think that he competes for a spot in Rochester this season. You already have Ratzlaff. I mean, obviously, it's not hard to cut ties with a Scott Ratzlaff, or it's not hard to cut tie. You know, they're going to send back Maloge and Leanders back to respected junior teams that continue to develop. I think that's a given. But I agree with you. I foresee Georgiev probably being the backup to Levi under normal circumstances in Rochester. And it's again, depth at that position is not a bad thing to have, and it just creates more competition, which I think brings out the best in a goaltender.
Yeah, for sure. And who knows? Hopefully UPL is nothing serious and they're just playing it safe. Because I think as we've mentioned before, obviously, who knows what's going to happen with Lyon. I think he's obviously, especially if UPL's injured to start camp, he definitely has the inside track to starting opening night. But yeah, I mean, it really depends on what the severity is.
Yeah, it's only $125,000 a year, but we just know how unwilling Terry Pegula is to spend money to the cap, and that I think they're still like $4 million away. But in my eyes, if you sign that guy, I think you're just definitely expecting Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen to miss some time here. And given his injury history, you'd assume it's probably a lower body thing. I'm not sure if they exactly announced like what exactly happened. All I saw that he tweaked something. And normally when you hear the word like tweak, it's probably like a groin or a hamstring, something like that, or a knee. I don't, and if it's one of those things, we know the history he's already had in the past with lower body injuries.
Yeah, that would obviously not be ideal, and maybe
not a great way to start the season either.
Why they got Alex Lyon in the first place, and yeah, this could be related to that, but we can wait and see for a little bit. They don't have to disclose anything for a while, I don't think. So we've got some time, and hopefully for everybody's case, for Sabres fans, for the entire team, I think it would be it would be best case scenario if it was something minor and they were just adding depth.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Any particular players you're most interested in seeing in training camp? Outside of, your obvious, your Dahlins, your Tages. Like, I'm really interested to see, what line combinations we get as the preseason gets ready to come to a close. When you're starting to sign guys back to their junior teams, back to college, you're kind of trimming that roster down. But, I'm most interested in seeing those later games and line matchups and trying to get a really good idea of, what Lindy is envisioning for this team, at least in that top six. The bottom six, I think there's a lot of different ways you can go. I don't think the top six is as definitive as the people say it is, because we know how Lindy likes to mix up with lines. But is there any particular player or players you're most interested in seeing how they perform in this very important training camp?
Yeah, I'll do one new guy and one older guy not older guy, but guy from past few seasons for each group. New guy, Josh Doan in the forward group. I think how he plays and how he's developed and where he is currently, he could really make a difference in how they actually formulate those forward lines. If he fits in really well with a guy like Ryan McLeod, or if he's a little bit farther down the lineup, I think that could make a huge difference. And then obviously, I think everybody's talked about it, everybody's heard about it. Jack Quinn, with supposedly how much stronger he looks, how much muscle he's put on in the offseason after a fully healthy offseason, coming off those 2 leg injuries early last season. That's going to make a huge difference where he is. He could potentially be on the second line, first power play unit. That's obviously huge. The other piece of that trade, Michael Kesselring, how he looks potentially on that second pair with who likely will be his partner in Owen Power. I think Owen Power is of the Sabres fan base, to say the least. And this is a massive season for him and his career and how he's viewed moving forward. Obviously, he's got the huge deal, number 1 overall pick, but it seems as though, of course, we haven't seen Kesselring play yet, but this is Kesselring's best opportunity in a top 4 role consistently at the NHL level. And the numbers seem to support it. Everything people have said about him seem to support that he could be potentially the perfect pair for a guy like Owen Power on the back end there. And having that super solid second pair on defense behind what we all think will be a very solid first pair in Bowen Byram and Rasmus Dahlin, it will be absolutely massive for this team. If that Peterka trade, in terms of the contributions from Josh Doan and Michael Kesselring, turns out the way that they wanted to, we could look back on that trade just like we did the Savoy for Ryan McLeod trade, and the Byram for Middlestat trade is something super savvy by Kevin Adams. But obviously those 2 guys need to produce, and they need to fit in the lineup as well as a lot of us hope they will.
Any bubble players for you guys that could be on the outside looking in?
Well, we mentioned earlier, I think Krebs feels like he could be on the bubble. Any of those fourth line guys, right? Like Beck Mallinston, obviously a newer guy, but Justin Danforth. And we've mentioned, at least last week, we talked about the defense. Obviously, Matthias Samuelsson. It seems like Connor Timmins is pretty solidified on that third pair on the right side based upon what they gave up to get him. But yeah, it seems like Krebs, Samuelsson, Mallinston. I think Greenway's probably solid, but given his injury history, I don't think he's necessarily a sure thing either. So anyone on that slated into that fourth line as we currently see it, obviously things could change from that perspective. And then obviously that third pair on defense could be considered bubble guys, to say the least.
And I'll go with bubble guys to start for me. I think even though he's obviously under contract, he signed a long-term deal, Matthias Samuelsson, I really don't think anything's given with him. We do know that he was in trade talks in the offseason. We all saw like their board back during that episode of Embedded, and you saw Samuelson's name on there in terms of, from what I could understand, it's a guy that could have been on the move, a guy that they were trying to move. Ryan Johnson, also a left-handed defenseman. I know he doesn't play physical, but neither did Samuelsson. I just don't think that you sign that guy to an extension unless you have plans for him. You know what I mean? Like, I genuinely think that that's a guy that if he has a really strong training camp, at this point, you're staring 15 years in the face. I don't care how much money you make, I don't care if Ryan Johnson gives you a better chance to win over Matthias Samuelsson, and you find that out right out of training camp. Then guess who should be sitting in the press box night 1? It should be Matthias Samuelsson. You mentioned Peyton Krebs. I think he's definitely a bubble guy too. It's unfortunate. He was, obviously a lot of people were excited about him after the Eichel trade because he was the best prospect in Vegas' system. And he just kind of turned out to be a bottom 6 guy who provides a ton of energy and a lot of grit, something probably didn't really expect from him when we traded for him. But, there are guys on this team, and like I mentioned, Noah Ostlund, who I really hope can push a guy like Krebs either to be better or out of that role entirely. I mean, we'll see, because you did go get guys like Josh Doan who can play a physical style. You do have guys who already play a little bit more of a scrappy style that on this team. Who is it? Benson is, a much more skilled version almost of Peyton Krebs. You know what I mean? Like you have that guy already, and he plays in your top 6. Not saying you can't use more than one, But, if you're going to get more offensively out of a Noah Ostlund, and here's one of his clips from the prospect tournament, started from the beginning, hit his goal where he, takes it forehand, backhand, and, scores a nice goal on Columbus. One of his better moments during the tournament. And then you see how much he improved physically, putting on size and just stepping up in physical moments. I really am interested to see if a guy like Osling can really push for a spot that might belong to a Peyton Krebs. I don't know. In terms of players that I do have my eye on, you mentioned Kesselring. I'm going to say Owen Power, because, this is really kind of like a put up or shut up thing with him, right? Like Owen Power, you've been searching for that defensive partner for him now for 3 off seasons. You finally found it, or you hope you have. Can he perform and improve his game to the level that, garnered that first overall pick? And Michael Kessler, we know his game. He plays physical. He is a stay-at-home guy. He can move the puck up the ice, but he takes a lot of pride of playing good in his own end. So that guy specifically, Owen Power, I'm interested to see how well those two play together, because they're going to be glued with each other on the blue line in every single preseason game, in my opinion, and all throughout training camp.
Yeah, those are my guys as well, and I think that is going to be obviously the main guys. Of course, need to produce like all stars that they are, but these guys on the second, third forward lines and second, third D pairings, I think potentially could be, along with the power play, of course, and the goaltending, but could be the difference in whether this team makes the playoffs or not.
Yeah, another guy I have my eyes on too is Alex Lyon. I know you have kind of gone back and forth about it. I genuinely think Alex Lyon is your starting goaltender on opening night, even more so now with the UPL injury. I think that if UPL can't, get enough rubber in the training camp, and if he can't see enough action in preseason, that just even says more that Alex Lyon, in my opinion, should be your night 1 starter.
Yeah, I think that makes it way more likely, of course. But I think we'll know in the next couple of weeks UPL status, and then you go from there. But he's got as good of a shot as any, and I hope he takes advantage of it. I think it'll help everybody.
Apparently, according to to Brian Dev, Johnson still has 1 more year of AHL eligibility. So again, this is the final year where he can go back and forth, I think, between Buffalo and Rochester. So again, maybe they're not as quick to rush him. Maybe Samuelson can rest a little more easier, knowing that, that first year of the contract is a 2-way. I think it's probably the last year of his deal, or maybe it's the first year of his new deal, is 2-way. So do you have any final thoughts before we get out of here? I know your time's cut short tonight, but any final thoughts heading into
aside from what we've already mentioned, not really. I think somebody just mentioned, are the Sabres done with signing anybody this offseason? Name we've brought up a few times is Jack Roslovic. I don't think
how is he not signed right now?
Yeah, he might be waiting for his best option. A guy like that, who had a pretty good year last year and has a relatively good career in the NHL, might just be waiting to see where he could contribute the most. And if I were him, and I'm looking at all of the volatility in the Sabres forward group, especially in the middle 6, I would potentially look at a place that, who knows if we would pay him, but it seems like an option where he could potentially end up on the second line, maybe even the second power play unit, and have a pretty important role. And hopefully, if we paid him $3.5–4 million a year, I think that would be as much as he could potentially get anywhere as well. So
how much money is he willing to sign for, though, as a guy? I know probably you can't be too picky at this point, just because it is this late into the off season and training camp is here. But how picky can you really be at this point?
Yeah, from his perspective, given that he didn't sign over the summer, I think it's either a lack of interest or not necessarily what he was looking for based upon his production last year. My hope is that he had a relationship with Jarmo from his Columbus days, or they at least know each other, some type of relationship with their agent, Kevin Adams as well, that they potentially could talk to him, because adding a guy like that pushes people down, obviously gets players into less important roles, and adding a guy with experience obviously can't hurt, as we saw with Jason Zucker last year. So that would be a guy to keep an eye on. Other than that, I can't really think of anybody. There's probably others out there that if we went down a list, we could potentially make an argument for, but I think that's the the final potential piece of who they could sign to start training camp and into the preseason. But other than that, this is probably what the roster is going to be and who is going to contribute. And obviously the puzzle of it all is what's next. So we'll see what happens, but yeah, it should be exciting.
Yeah. And we're going to pull up, I was looking for this too. Redeem Mirka's goal from the prospect tournament. And slides in there. Rolls it right by the yeah, again, I'm just seeing it was again as advertised. I'm so excited for him. I really am. I mean, I think that again, I know we're pretty set in our defensive pairings, but I just wouldn't be surprised if they utilize him in some capacity to start the season just to give him an NHL look. I'm not saying that he'd make the roster. No, I don't think he makes this roster, but you've seen crazier things. Give guys NHL games after a good camp, see what they have. That's something you can do up until 8 games without burning a year of their entry level deal. I think that's how it works, right?
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a legitimate shot for him, especially in Rochester. So we'll see what happens.
If he's eligible, you still got to figure that out. But this has been brought to you by Fatty Beer Company, Western New York's premier market and tap room with over 300 beers to choose from. If you need a beer, go to Fatty Beer. Let them know 2 goalies, 1 of Mike sent you. I do want to say thanks again to Bench Clears. I think I mentioned this before, the Buffalo Wings roller hockey team. This is the tank they sent me. Stick. Love it. Super comfortable. So shout out to Bench Clears again for hooking us up with some more tanks. So I am Duane. This has been episode 206. We'll talk to you next week. Or maybe sooner. We'll see. But as always, go Sabres.